Yes. I actually heard you before. Now I can't hear you when you put your headphones on. No, now I can hear you. Okay, no problem. This is a good time for now, at least for the near future. But yes, I am eating some stuff. But that's okay. I did read your article. That's cool, man. How'd you get published by them? Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But yeah, we should do this thing. Oh yeah. Oh, before I was gonna say, did you want to talk about? I thought we could also we'll talk about your Norway with unemployment, but I also thought we could also relate to Florida since we both have experience in Florida, and as we know that Florida they deliberately made it difficult for people to qualify. Like they deliberately made their website complicated so people couldn't qualify for benefits. Yeah. So just a difference, right? Norway to Florida, right? Yeah. I got the first dose. Sure. All right, no problem. Oh yeah. You talking to me or the mystery voice? Whoever that was. No, you're just louder. That's all.
Can you
just
hear
louder?
Interesting.
Oh.
All right. Yeah. We rocking out here, everybody.
Live on the internets, as
Live
they
on
say.
The internet. Yeah, I believe we are all audible. Let's do a little mic check. I can see my mic's bound. Do a little mic check over there for us, DJ.
All right, how's it going?
Oh, sounds fabulous.
All right, sounds good to me.
That's right, everybody.
Let's do it.
This is welcome back. This is our new thing, season 2 of Progressives Abroad. I'm your host, Boutique, over here in Oslo, Norway. Still here, pandemic living, and we got Mr. the Bull Moose Progressive himself.
Yeah, Teddy style, fisticuffs. No, and I'm in a random small town on the border of Poland and the Czech Republic. They don't need to know where.
Somewhere.
Somewhere down there in the Silesian region, but I won't go into detail.
Which is actually, am I right? Like, this is actually not so like distant from your historical roots, right?
Well, it's complicated as you can see. I was actually doing a lot of research. I don't even know if you want to talk about that, but I was actually reading about Lithuanian Jews actually, and during World War II. I mean, I knew that. I didn't realize that 95% of the Lithuanian Jewish population was killed during World War II.
Yes.
That I never knew it was that horrendously high, and then there's only about 3,000 Lithuanian Jews left in the whole country.
Dude, and it's really crazy. And actually, I mean, you've been to Lithuania before, right?
I got to visit for a few days, and back in 2015, I thought I had a great time, great country. I'd love to go back someday.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you should. I mean, I know it's pandemic time right now, but if you get a chance, you should to sneak up there. I mean, Lithuania is not in the best state right now. I guess neither is Poland, but I don't know. Maybe if things clear up before you leave or something.
Well, I was gonna say is that it looks like they're actually making more restrictions again in Poland.
Yeah,
everything's shutting down because they opened up a few things like museums and stuff like that, but now I guess they're closing it down again. So, as we're saying, I guess people or things are changing day to day. You know, nobody knows what they're doing. Everything's changing based on whatever they decide it's important. Because I think it's also regional in Poland. Like some regions are open, some regions are closed.
Yeah, and it's it's tough. It's really tough for a country like Poland, as well as many other of these kind of like central and like, you know, European countries, because it's just so much traffic going through it all the time. You know, like Poland, like Lithuania, is a very also a country where tons of people are like emigrating to work in other places, especially in like the UK or in Norway, Sweden, Germany, places like this. So they end up, you know, a lot of that's how, you know, they end up bringing a lot of, you know, kind of germs back and forth a lot of the time too. And so yeah, it's a tough it's not so isolated. I mean, we even got mad problems up here in Norway, and we're way more isolated up here.
And that's perfect segue to talk about what at least we wanted to talk about, focus tonight on how different countries have responded to COVID.
That's right. Yeah, but maybe for already for next time, I'm like super hyped to talk about Lithuanian Jews or the Jews of Europe in general. So we can do
we're getting more niche. I mean, we'll say that too, because we could say how we met. We basically connected through the internet. Based on just, I guess we were on a Bernie page or something and talking about, and I'm trying to tell people about student loan debt and all this stuff, like all these countries like Norway, basically anyone can go to school for free. And I guess you chimed in, and then we connected, and then we both realized that we have a lot of things in common, strangely enough, just randomly.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
We're
like you're true old school. We're like old school, like internet buddies.
Yeah, like you're from Florida. I lived in Florida for many years, and we're both, I guess, European Jewish people, but very, I guess, culturally or whatever. My ancestors were. You know what I mean?
Dude, by the way, before we get into by the way, everybody, if anybody's out there listening, tonight's topic is COVID, global like pandemic response from our perspectives out here. How where we have been living during this time of COVID has been reacting in comparison to the United States. But I just wanted to add one thing on the Jewish tip real quick. Looking at we got to look into that Sephardic Jew lineage, man, because we might have a Portuguese passport with our names on it here.
Well, I know Spain was offering citizenship if you could prove that that was like hundreds of years ago. If you could prove that your family was kicked out of Spain,
they were, they were, but I think they stopped it in like 2017. It was for like a period. Yeah. But I think from the best of my research, I think Portugal is still doing it. And yeah, you have to somehow prove that your family was kicked out during, you know, the Inquisition, and And but I think it can be if you were from anywhere in the Iberian Peninsula at that point of time. So yeah, we gotta look into that. Might be our only chance here. The final frontier. Anyways, yeah, we've got a whole Jew episode coming up. Soon. We can talk about that all day. I love talking about.
I
that
guess
stuff.
we should. Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, so let's open the gates here. We're gonna talk a little bit today about yes, pandemic response, and not to toot my own horn, but we did kind of come up with this topic based on an article that yours truly wrote, released last week, actually just after our last episode in Newsweek of all places, exactly about this topic. And let me bring it up here real quick. I'm gonna see if I can bring it up if my see if my VPN wants to work. Now my VPN doesn't want to work. Dang. Just say, well, anyways, the title of the article is Norway handles the COVID pandemic better than the US. Can we agree on this? Probably in general. Okay, here it is now. I'm going to bring it up real quick. Let's see. Yeah. VPN didn't want to work. And dun, 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 dun.
You shouldn't have to subscribe to read your own article, right? I did. And what I was mostly, at least what I was mostly focused on, was how they have the government programs to help you with things, not just like unemployment insurance, but the fact that they have like job training assistance and stuff like that, even for you. And you're not even from Norway. Right? Some guy. Yeah, some guy.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Lee J, can we get a mic check on your end?
Yeah, I'm all good.
Hey, you sound good. Interesting. Okay, something's up with this channel that I'm on. Okay. Anyways, now let's back it up for a second, since apparently nobody can hear me. But now everybody can hear me. Is that basically, in this article, from the perspective of a U.S. citizen living in Norway, I can safely say that the land of the midnight sun is managing the pandemic better than the U.S. by practically doing nothing, or should I say, nothing too out of the ordinary. And what I mean by that is that, as we see down here, Norway is a social democracy. Just like in Bernie Sanders' world, when we all love Bernie Sanders so much, still do to a certain extent. Everything that he wanted: national healthcare system, tuition-free education, paid parental leave, affordable childcare, sufficient unemployment benefits as a right to all its residents. All right. So this is not the point is why do I say they did nothing out of the ordinary is because this is what would happen anytime any kind of disaster happens, be it in your own personal life. Like it could be, 3 years ago, nothing's going on, safe economy, all this kind of stuff. You lose your job for whatever reason. You register as a job, what we call a job seeker. I like how they call it a job seeker too. It's not just like it's almost like an uplifting term. You know what I mean? You're not you're not unemployed. You're a job seeker.
Right, and we could talk about that too. That language really does make a big difference in how everything is done and expressed in our lives.
Yeah,
but we'll focus on that later.
Yeah, no, but I mean, but it's a really good point because that's exactly what the unemployment program here is called. But the point is that program exists no matter what, and of course, there's many benefits of an unemployment program, but the unemployment program exists no matter what, and that means if you become unemployed and you had some kind of contracted job, that is one stipulation of the situation. If you didn't have a contracted job, let's say before the pandemic or before you became unemployed or laid off or whatever, then there's another program for you. But if you had a job and you had worked a certain amount of hours, then they calculate it and they give you the equivalent of like 62.5% of your previous income over the past 3 years. Why did they do that? For what reason would they give unemployed people money? Any idea?
Right. Well, and it sounds like and that's just the standard. Like, when you do that, is there anything you have to actually apply for? Or is it like automatic?
It's not automatic. And to be honest, I mean, that's the truth of the situation. It's not automatic. It's definitely not automatic. Like, and I have to say it is very bureaucratic. It is not so easy to navigate. You do have to get to know the system. It is really a job just to get to understand the system. And they don't make it so easy for you.
Okay.
They want to make you but
they make you work for it, as they say, right?
Well, the thing is to be honest, one thing about these heavily bureaucratic systems, which we have in the United States too, we've seen a disaster with the unemployment system in Florida, is that in all of these heavily bureaucratic governmental systems, there's going to be a lag. You know what I mean? Sometimes worse than others. So yeah, I mean, sometimes things do take time. So for example, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was like an astronomical amount of people getting laid off and unemployed. So they kind of made up some special rules. And they said, okay, if you're waiting for unemployment payments right now, if you really need money, like immediately, like basically like fill out this form or like call this number and we'll get like cash to you immediately. And once you are approved, once all your paperwork's been passed through, you got to get, documentation. It's a lot of documentation from like your former employer and your contract. And then they have to evaluate it, do all the math and whatnot. And then you would basically just like pay that back from the money that they give you once you get paid. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. And yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of, so what are like the benefits of this kind of thing? It's immense. You know what I mean? During any period of time, but also during a pandemic, it's like really immense because there was a crisis, but they didn't have to like build an entire new system. They didn't have to like come out with like new healthcare programs. They didn't have to start sending people checks in the mail because there's already a system that does that anyways,
So, and that's the thing. I never even thought about that when it came to the whole pandemic situation, that Norway, basically, because it already had such a strong and built up system, basically didn't need to do much different when the pandemic hit because their system's already in place, as opposed to, I feel like the biggest issue with America is that we try to get away with doing as little as possible and then hope it never happens. And then we get a problem. And if a problem explodes in our face, then we immediately have to figure something out, as opposed to having something prepared ahead of time, all for the sake of cost, right? Everybody always complains about the cost of things, which is the main excuse not to do anything. But in the end, I would think it would cost more money to have to do something really fast than to have something laid out ahead of time.
Yeah, well, of course, because I mean, it always it's like this idea, it's like the good old preventative maintenance,
Yes.
you the system is already in place, and I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it goes. I mean, dude, it's almost silly to be even having this conversation. I mentioned this also in the article, is that, like, healthcare. When I wrote about this article, I find what's most impressive is the unemployment system and how that really saved everything, because the healthcare system is just default. But this is when you really came to find out that the unemployment system is default too. I mean, nobody even talks about this stuff here, and it's the same in Germany, it's the same in Denmark, it's the same in Sweden, it's the same in pretty much all European countries and a number of other like wealthy nations around the world. Is that this stuff is like obvious.
It's the that's the standard, that's the status quo. That's the common sense, right? It's like, of course we're gonna have this set up.
Yeah.
And
Well, you don't want. I mean, you don't want like people just being, thrown out of their houses, thrown on the street, like. Or in this case, I think one of the biggest advantages of this, system that they have here and in a lot of other places is that people weren't desperate. It didn't create desperation. So
right. Well, that's the problem. Is the paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, I think, is a majority of our country lives that way now. That people are often one paycheck away from being destitute, losing their homes, losing their livelihood. And I mean, they have the moratorium on evictions and foreclosures right now.
yeah.
But I feel like as soon as things quote unquote back to normal, whatever that means, I think Biden says he wants us to be able to have a 4th of July holiday celebration. So I guess he wants us to open up by July 4th. No one's had that conversation. What's going to happen to all the back rent and mortgage payments that people owe? Right?
Yep.
What conversation is that going to be? Is that going to be pay us $20,000 now or you're evicted in a week? No one's had that conversation. But obviously, it sounds like stuff like that really doesn't happen in Norway.
No, I mean, it's pretty much impossible, really, that would happen here. I mean, it's just what can I say? It's just like they want to be like humane to people. People are taking care of you. It's not that they want to be humane. It's like that is just the rights of people. That's what it is. It's nobody. Nobody's giving there's no handouts. You know what I mean? There's no, like, cause there's a lot of people, especially in United States where we come from, that are like, I don't need any handouts. Like, I don't need the government to give me anything. Like, but these things aren't handouts. These are like basically like you withdrawing from your savings account.
Right. I mean? It's you getting and that's the thing. Remember, we were talking about language earlier.
Yeah.
The term entitlements. The term entitlement has been changed into a word which means you think you're entitled to something, which means you deserve it without earning it. But when you say entitlement, no, that means, yes, Social Security is an entitlement because I paid into it. I'm entitled to my money.
Yeah.
So it's it's using a word and changing the meaning. So in Norway and these social democracies, it sounds like you're entitled to these things because you do pay into them. You are invested into them.
Yeah,
they're available and then they're available to you when you need them.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not like, but that's the difference, because at the end of the day, it's not. I guess you would say it's not really like means tested. You know what I mean? At the end, like, no matter what, like, I mean, to a certain extent, like, they'll say you're going to get 62.5% of your, but it's not like if you made over this much money, then like, we're not going to give anything to you. Or if you don't make any money, we're not going to give anything to you. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
It's not means tested in that way. It's just like, it's just, it's like, if somehow, somewhere, the government determined at some point that you should be able to survive, on 62.5% of your income. You know what I mean? Which is very reasonable, I think. I mean, if you can't.
Yeah.
I mean, but and for some reason, like, you're not, if you are like a person that is on, for some reason not working or whatever, like, there's also other programs for you. Is the idea, I mean, I don't even think people think really deep into it like we're thinking about it. But I mean, the way that I see it is that it's like, like, we all kind of like pay taxes up into the cloud, and it kind of like rains down upon everyone in like a equitable way. You know what I mean? Um, in a way that you know, like we're all in this together.
And that'll be my jumping in point, because I've been saying this for years, even before the pandemic. Look at our generation. We had what, 9/11, Iraq War,
Yeah. I was
economic
just talking to my
collapse,
buddy about this earlier. Yeah.
and then COVID and the Trump era. It's like,
It
what?
never ends.
Yeah. But even before that, like before I moved to Florida, I grew up in a relatively affluent city in Southern California, in Orange County. It was known as a huge, like, Republican, like, called it Reagan country. And my father, was a New York Jew, not to say, it's just an interesting story. Basically, it's like, whatever. We got some shit for it. Like, even back in the 90s, my dad being this New York Jew wearing a suit, to his job was like was a problem. We can talk about that later. The point is, this was Reagan country, and I'll just do two things. This made me think of a story. First thing, my dad goes to the first PTA meeting in Irvine, California, at my elementary school, and they're having a meeting about, we need to raise money to buy a new copy printer for the school so that the teachers can print out things.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, so here, we're going to have a fundraising opportunity. We're going to have all of our kids go door to door and like sell stuff. I think it was like
cookies and chocolate bars.
I think it was even like, I want to say like a wrapping paper, just like weird stuff we were selling. And then my dad's the new guy there, he just like he told me, he like kind of stands up, raises his hand. He's like, instead of forcing our children to go door to door to sell stuff to ourselves, why don't we all just pay like a 25-cent tax or something?
Yeah.
And then he said the T word to a bunch of Reagan Republicans in Southern California 90s. So he already it's basically like shit on the floor.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So the reason I bring this up, it's the same kind of mentality. It's like people would rather like force their children to go to door, raise money, than just pay like $5 in taxes.
Yeah. What's funny, dude, is like I have a friend who is definitely like on the other in that I don't want to pay taxes spectrum. Trump supporter. Trump supporter would be Bernie supporter, but just kind of jumbly confused. And I figured out a way to like make it make sense. I was like, it's like basically like going to Costco, like it's like going to the superstore, you pay
a membership for Costco and you get a good deal when you get in there.
Exactly. I mean, we're all gonna buy different stuff once we get in there, but like we're all getting a better deal. You gotta but like single payer health insurance is kind of like your it's like your bulk discount,
That's actually a really good way to put it. And your membership is being an American.
Yeah. So,
and that's the thing. It's and again, I really feel like we'll definitely talk about this again another time, guys. That's why I feel like language is so important. How things are, just like you said. Like, instead of saying it's like every time you say you want to do something that's a program that's helpful to people, people say you're a socialist, you're a communist. That's the end of the conversation, right? That's a very old school 1950s Cold War boomer era tactic, right?
Mm-hmm, yep.
But just like you said, instead of saying you're paying taxes, you could frame it, you're paying a membership, which is to be a citizen of the United States. And with being a citizen and a member of the United States, you get all of these awesome benefits. I mean, I tell you, if Trump wanted to be a transformational president, he could have pushed through Trump Care.
Absolutely.
And the fact that Trump's name was on it, they would have done it.
Yeah.
And that's good and bad. That's like, it's stupid and unfortunate that's how our system works. But if you called it Trump Care or Patriot Care and framed it in a proper way, seriously, if you push through Patriot Care, everyone, all red state people would be for it. I bet you. As long as,
dude, that's man. When are we going back? We got to go. One of these days, we got to go run.
And I'm kind of my ADD. Again, we both have ADD, ADHD, but my ADHD brain's going on right now. is like, for example, I want to talk about this real quick. Florida, right? Florida, last election, they voted for Trump, but they also voted for the $15 minimum wage, right? So what does that mean? It means they're willing to vote for a guy like Trump, who, again, to put it mildly, has some issues, but they also economically, politically, policy-wise, they're progressive in a sense, I feel. The issue is how our politics is like the culture war, culture issues have gotten mixed in with the economic issues. The point I'm trying to say is that people deep down, especially like working class people, even in red states, if they want progressive policies, they hate Democrats, if that makes sense. They hate Democrats talking about quote unquote social issues or cultural issues, but you can get a lot of them on your side for economic policy. I feel like that's the real issue. Yeah. That's my theory, at least.
Well, yeah, and they also have, I think, a lot of problems with immigrants. I think that's a really big issue too. It's so funny, man, that immigration is almost like it's like right up there with like guns. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's I was gonna say that's the problem, because I've tried to cut back on my nonsensical having arguments with random people on the internet phase in my life. But I just remember there's sometimes you'll find some people that no matter what, like if you say I'm not even a Democrat, registered Democrat, that's a whole other story. But basically, if you're talking to someone, they'll just say, well, you're a liberal and that means you like to kill babies. Like that's their ultimate fallback position. Like no matter what you say or do, you're pro-choice, therefore you like to kill babies, therefore I hate you. Like there's some things that you go back to and I feel like immigration is kind of a similar issue. It's like, well, I don't care because I'd rather not get paid than if you're going to give money to immigrants. That's how some people feel.
Yeah. So, and you know what, that's the thing too. Okay. So here's a funny thing, bringing it back out here, out to the abroad. So
yeah, like, please, example, like I said, help me.
No. This is good. Yeah. We're just wrapping it around. So one thing that's interesting is like, for example, I get a lot of, tourists coming to visit me here in Norway, and on occasion, one of them might get like an injury or something like that, and people out there may be surprised to hear, but you too can go to the hospital here and you're not going to pay a lot of money, because it just doesn't cost a lot of money. There's no secret price. You know what I mean? Like when if you need to go to the emergency room, I don't remember exactly what it is, but it costs something like 250 kroner, about 25 euros, $25, okay, to go to the emergency room, if you get like an x-ray, it might be like $8 or something, and just to show you how that works out, because people will say, oh, well, I mean, I might have explained this a bit last week, but just in case anybody wasn't listening, basically here in Norway and a lot of other countries, it's not completely free. It's like you have a limit. Like every year you can spend up to $250. So you can come here, you can spend $25 to go to the hospital, and if you're a tourist or not, you know what I mean, or if you live here, it doesn't matter. That's just how much it costs, because here they're not gonna, when everybody is paying into the system, when like everybody is like investing in the system, then there is extra left over to like share around with like whoever may be a guest, you know what I mean? Or like, so I mean, because at the end of the day, we all want to take care of each other. And again, I don't actually totally understand the theory behind that, because I think that we're actually thinking about this a lot more than the people here who are actually from here, because like I said in this article,
well, they take it for granted.
Yeah. Like I said in this article,
like, of course.
Yeah, like talking about healthcare is almost like a non-issue. Like people just don't. It's just a given. You know what I mean? It's just
and I mean that's the thing. Part of my job, my unofficial job, for me at least, my goal as an American teacher teaching English in other countries and now in Europe, is I kind of try to tell them the realities that it is to be an American and live in the United States, because people don't know these, just like you said, they take it for granted. They can't comprehend these situations. They don't know, they can't fathom the idea that going to the emergency room might cost you tens of thousands of dollars. It just doesn't, that the idea doesn't
like,
even exist
why?
for them. Right.
Why?
And, and I've talked to them about, education and how I won't, again, don't want to go too off the rails, but I literally spent a whole class teaching, talking about the electoral college and 3/5 of a person. And they went from being like laughing at how ridiculous it was to appalled about how they decided a slave was 3/5 of a person. So there's a lot of concepts that a lot of other people around the world just don't even understand or have an idea that that's how the U.S. works. And I actually want to talk about Poland a little bit because that's my because I'm
Let's
here
hear
right
about
now.
Poland. I want to hear about Poland.
So I'm not an expert, obviously. I just get mostly from what I hear from my students. And so I would say overall, Poland kind of took the more of the American approach because they basically shut everything down and they basically give no monetary support to anybody. I don't even know if they got any checks.
Really?
I only know that they people get paid a few hundred zloty, the Polish currency, a month for if they have a kid. But there's basically been no financial assistance to anything. They just opened up the museums recently, but I think they're actually closing everything. Like they opened up a little bit, and now they're closing everything down again. So it just keeps going back and forth because the COVID cases are going up. And just like I've been talking to my students, there's really two ways you can do it to be just, because the problem with the United States and Poland is they did the worst way. They shut the government forced all the businesses to close. People don't have jobs anymore, and they gave people basically no monetary assistance. Or you have to say, okay, we're going to let you open. You're going to earn your money at your own risk, right? But instead, the United States and Poland said, we're not letting you work, and we're not going to help you financially, which I think is obviously the worst of both systems.
Yeah, this is terrible. Yeah, I mean,
and again, and tell me, is Norway doing any sort of UBI, at least for the pandemic, or the unemployment system is already fine, so didn't need to do anything?
Yeah, that's the thing. And that is a very interesting question because, it's not really necessary,
Right.
The people who have the job, people who keep working, they keep working. If you had to stop working, and there was an unprecedented amount of unemployment, like it was pretty because of the shutdown, because they don't want people like going around and sharing germs with each other. So yeah,
right.
So yeah, and then those people, it's essentially kind of like UBI. You know what I mean? It's
and
like,
I guess and I guess like it's just like you said, the point is that their system is already so secure and set up and strong that they didn't even really need to do much different, as opposed to us here are scrambling like. Other countries, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but like other countries, just like you said, I think it was like Denmark and Norway, or not Denmark and like Finland and even United Kingdom and Netherlands, the government is all giving their citizens like at least a percent. Some I think is like 80% of their salary, some is 40%.
Yeah, definitely.
But they all,
like
everybody, the government's
Western Europe,
it's not considered even a bad thing. It's just, of course, if we're not letting you work, we're going to give you some money to survive. Yeah. And in the U.S., we spend months arguing over like $600 one time.
Yeah.
Or $1,400 one time, and that's the thing. Who knows if anything else, I don't think anything else is going to happen. Like they're going to hope that we can go back to work and then
it's over, dude.
Good luck. Yeah, that's it.
Let me recite you some more poetry over here from this article. I want to get your response.
All right, from some guy that you met. Yeah.
From this guy, Josh Bennett.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna just show you. I'm gonna recite you some poetry from this article. Where is it? Yeah, here we go. Okay, so because I think this is exactly what you're talking about right here. So yeah, the trifecta of public services enabled the population to follow regulations without the fear of losing access to healthcare or income. This approach ultimately maintained social stability, reduced infection rates by keeping as many people as possible out of the stuffy offices and off the crowded streets. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. From the beginning of the pandemic, the government press conferences have been in both measured and in a serious tone. Prime Minister Erna Solberg and Health Minister Bent Høie of Norway's right-wing Høyre party regularly addressed the public while standing socially distanced at their separate podiums. The officials shared a realistic outlook with a populace that was collectively entering a serious and developing crisis. The government sent a strong message with the very, science-based guidelines. So what's really interesting too, just to add a little history to the situation, is that it goes on to talk about how in this time, the Hoyre party, in this time of pandemic, a right-wing conservative right-wing party in a social democracy is having like record approval ratings. And it's really all a facade, because again, they're not really doing anything. This is all just part of a program. Like, they're basically like receiving praise because of their attitude towards the situation, but I mean, pretty much all of the groundwork has already been laid for them. As it says here, ironically, the social security system was built up by Norway's political left, starting with the introduction of the healthcare system after World War II. After World War II, if anybody's listening out there and you don't realize that Europe was let's say one of those S-hole countries, one of those S-hole continents after World War II, because it was all bombed to shit. And this was in a period where the GDP in Norway was lower than most of the other Western nations. Can you imagine this, that at that time, I'm pretty sure statistics show that Norway was basically the second poorest nation in Europe, second to only Poland.
Wow.
And they established, I'm going to swing back over, they established a universal healthcare program during that time.
Well,
that's the excuse of the United States.
Let's talk about it, because I think the point, the truth to that is that Europe basically almost completely destroyed itself.
Yeah.
And then they realized, oh, we can't keep doing like this. We actually need to work together so we don't kill ourselves. So I think the fact that the United States has always had this like rugged individualism thing, and how, aside from Pearl Harbor and things like that, we didn't really suffer as much as the European countries. And so we were able to keep our independent, individualistic perspective, as opposed to Norway. It's like, you know what? No, maybe we shouldn't let people die for completely treatable health conditions just because they don't have enough money. And here's another thing you just mentioned, like what happened after World War II? America, not even that. The United States, the Marshall Plan. Remember the Marshall Plan? We gave Europe billions of dollars to rebuild themselves after World War II. Yeah. Now, partially because we wanted them to be strong against the Soviets, granted, but we gave them an infrastructure program, basically.
Yeah.
So we need to Marshall Plan ourselves right now. Right?
I mean, what's it going to take, really? I mean, because I've been saying it for years, and is that sometimes I think that I'm not like one of these people that are like, oh, like the Civil War is coming and all this stuff like that. But for many years, I can't really think of too much else that would solve the issue, rather than like the country just like splitting up, like, I mean,
that's a whole, we could have a whole, it's progressives. We'll that's another conversation. Yeah. We should do that. And we can compare it. We can compare it again. It's progressives abroad. We can compare it because, I'm learning about these things, like, speaking of Poland and Lithuania were at one point one country. Yeah, the Poland-Lithuanian Commonwealth obviously didn't work out. We could talk about that later.
Grand Duchy of Lithuania.
Well, and I don't want to dwell off go off the rails so much, but I don't know if you knew. I forgot his name, but it was like hundreds of years ago, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, and he basically founded Vilnius as the new capital.
Vytautas.
And he actually invited Jewish people all over from Europe. He invited them to go live in Vilnius, because he wanted them.
He invited them during the Spanish Inquisition. That's what I'm saying. You got to look into this shit.
I do. Well, hey, if you can somehow prove that my great grandfather from the 1400s was kicked out of Spain, bring it on. But yeah, the point is,
you're gonna be there, man. You can go check the archives.
Maybe, but the point is that, and it went from that to, in World War II, 95% of them were killed. But the point is that World War II created the desire and necessity for unity in these countries, I feel.
Yes.
That's why all these social programs came after World War II, and the United States didn't have as much of a struggle or suffer from that war, so the needs didn't become. But now, like I said, we have a combination of a pandemic and a global economic crisis. And if we can't get universal health care now during a global pandemic, it's never going to, like, my grandkids will be, why don't we have universal health? You know what I mean? Like, and that's the whole other story is why are, because here's the thing, just like you said, it's easy to make people happy. People like money, right? People like being taken care of. They want to know that they're not going to be screwed. Like, Biden could become the most beloved president for our generation if we just did the bare minimum, right? And they, and they're already, like I said, I'll use the term, they already neoliberaled on the money. Like, remember they said $2,000, and then they said 40. It's like, what? It's like, you guys,
dude.
Then it's like they gave up on the $15 minimum wage immediately, and that's the whole point. It's like the Democrats have the legacy. They're supposed to be the party of the working people, right? And they could be, if they wanted to win, they could. And that's the whole point, is that I just feel like I would say, I'm just going to say 98% of our politicians on both parties are just bought. And that's the real reason that things don't happen. Like, honestly, right now, if someone wanted to be bold, Biden could say, everybody's going to get like $2,000 a month until the pandemic's over, right? And once the pandemic's over, we're going to put people back to work. We're going to do a federal works program, and we're going to rebuild our country. So we're not just giving money away. We're going to pay people to work, because that's always the Republican argument. You're just going to pay people to stay home. It's like, you know what? Sure, during the pandemic, and after that, if you want to make more money, let's build the country again.
Yeah.
And again, we know, and that's the thing that frustrates me, because I actually worked at the FDR Museum in New York. So I got like, this all was like mushed into my brain. Like, I became an expert just by working there, like reading everything. And people, we know what the solutions are. We've just been doing everything exactly wrong since the Reagan era.
It's like Biden wants to be like internment camp FDR, but he doesn't want to be like New Deal FDR.
Well, I'm actually glad that you brought that up, because again, it's called the bad faith argument. Every time you talk about FDR, they're saying, so does that mean you like Japanese internment camps? It's like, clearly no. Clearly that was a bad thing he did. And that's about the argument. Like, and that's why I feel like moving in that conversation is that I don't want to dwell too much enough topic, but basically Bernie's mistake was he ran as a democratic socialist when he should have ran as a New Deal Democrat. And then when you say New Deal, that's not FDR Democrat, because if you say I'm an FDR Democrat, someone's going to say, does that mean you like Japanese internment camps? Huh? Yeah, like, okay, yeah, it was a really bad thing he did. But if you say New Deal Democrat, that means you're supporting the policies. So bringing it back to abroad, my opinion is most of the countries in Europe after World War II realized how much they almost killed themselves and they were destroyed. They needed to, became more, I'll say the word socialistic in nature, because they realized we need to do this if we're going to survive as a society. And America has been able to not do that for various reasons, like economics. But now, because our country, again, we'll be honest, it's on the decline. And we have two choices. We either become social democracy, or the ultimate outcome is fascism. Like, those are the two choices we have. And unfortunately, majority of the country, like I said, they would have, you remember how close they were going to vote for Mike Bloomberg? They would have voted for Bloomberg if they had over, you know what I mean? As long as it wasn't Bernie. So,
and it's so crazy, dude. It's so, well, I still think the biggest mistake Bernie ever made, even bigger than being friends with Joe Biden, was not running third party in the 2016 election. I will 100%. I will like die on that hill, man. Like, I think that I would bet I'm not a man with a lot of money, and like being Jewish and all, like I don't like to gamble, but I can say that, and I would bet all my savings that Bernie Sanders, I'm pretty sure
it could have happened. It could have happened because 2016 was the year anything was possible, right? Trump and Hillary were both so hated by the majority of the population. That was the year anything was possible.
He would have.
Unfortunately, like I said, love the guy, but mostly because, remember, I'm a policy guy. Like, you can still criticize the man, and he just, unfortunately, for whatever reason, he didn't have the fighting instinct in him. Again, my boy, Bull Moose Progressive, Teddy Roosevelt. He tried. He ran as a third party in and that's what the Wilson become president. That's a whole other story, right? But the point is, at least he went down swinging, right? At least he tried. And in 2016, he didn't try, and we got Trump anyways. So I feel like you should always, you got to try.
Well, yeah,
you know.
I feel like we should just do like a whole. We should have like a whole series on like what Bernie should have done.
What he should have done.
That's like a whole other. That's like a whole series of podcasts. But I mean, yeah, I just because we know that compared to other like socially democratic and I'm not gonna. I don't claim to be like a social democrat, but this is the where we're living over here in Europe. Is most of the countries are social democrat, and it's generally the most humane example of capitalism that we have on the planet.
Well, and like I said, and I'm glad you bring that up, because at least as far as I know, I do identify as a social democrat, which also is a term that doesn't even really exist in the United States.
Yeah.
People call themselves democratic socialists in the United States when their policies are actually social democracies. And, and I mean, not that I get involved, but, I'm like, that means I'm considered like reactionary by a communist if I support social democracy. You know what I mean? Like, it's all screwed up, even though I'm considered a left-wing guy in the United States. The point is, again, I always say I'm all about policy and I'm all about data.
Yeah.
Which countries are consistently considered the happiest countries in the world to live in? And not just based on bullshit.
Yeah.
Why? It's based on metrics, just like you said. It's based on unemployment, based on gender equality. It's based on education, based on like healthcare. And it's always the top 5 or always the Nordic countries. And then it's like Netherlands, and then it's Austria, I think, made up to this. And it's just like, and that's what they do, is just common sense shit. That's what's so frustrating to me.
And the biggest, like, it's funny. I met one of the guys that does that. He does that survey every year. He's one of the people that I met. One of the researchers that work at the Happiness Institute.
Oh, that would be amazing. You get him on the podcast.
I think he's in the Netherlands, and he said, the main factor really is just all of these factors that you just said. But what is the shortest distance between the top of the food to the upper class and like the lower class, like economically, like upper class and lower class? And that's why. And what is the distance between those, like economically, and at the same time, what is the equality or like the equity? How equitable is the access to these resources that they're basing the study on? So like you said, like being able to make a living wage, healthcare, access to healthcare, yada yada yada, all these things, education, all these things that we talk about. And that's the thing. So it's like, it doesn't matter. So here, for example, in Norway, it's like the richest people don't make nearly as much as the richest people in the United States, and the poorest people in Norway don't make nearly as less as the people do in the United States, for example. So already the economic gap is much smaller, and on top of that, it doesn't matter who the hell you are. Whether you are the richest person in Norway or the poorest person in Norway, everybody gets the same access to healthcare. You know what I mean? Everybody gets the same access to the same education. If you're super rich, it is possible to buy like private health insurance, and it means you get to move ahead in the line a little faster. You get to go see special doctors that nobody else can go to and stuff like that. It does exist. It is not a completely closed system, but for the most part, everybody's just like rolling with the regular stuff, and it's like good enough, And
let's be fair. I always try to say, like I said, I appreciate the honesty. You're saying how Norway's system isn't completely amazing, but let's be, like I said, let's be fair. What's the population of Norway?
It's about 5.5 million.
Okay, so that's 5 million people. America's, I think it's near. I always usually just say 350 million. I think it's 330 million. Clearly a big difference. I assume it's a lot easier to have a country that dedicates all their resources, money to healthcare, education, all these things for their people. There's only 5 million people. But that's the argument you hear, that America's such a big country, it wouldn't work.
I'm ready.
But that's also because Norway isn't spending, $750 billion a year to bomb the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's about, we have the resources to do all this.
Well,
We
that's
choose not to.
well,
We
that's
choose not to do it.
the reason that you strike on there is is an issue of priorities. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
we in the
100%.
United States, we voters, apparently because we vote. Well, not all of us, but we vote for the warmongers that support the military-industrial complex. We prioritize that it's better to spend like 51% of like the discretionary budget on military. But what's the excuse? The excuse is always, oh well, the United States is too big. The United States is my favorite one, which is like super racist or super discriminatory, is that the United States is just too diverse. And I'm like, okay,
Too diverse?
yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? But whatever,
Right.
it's just bullshit. Anyways, this is just excuses. But
Well, no, because I was gonna say that's always the excuse that conservatives say about Norway. Like they say, Norway's all the same it's the same population of people, so it's easier to do all this stuff. It's like, well, you tell me. Like I'm assuming, obviously, there's minorities that live in Norway.
well,
Obviously,
actually,
right?
quite a bit, dude. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, for especially in growing by the day. I mean, okay, like I mean, just to give you like a local example, like on the floor that I live in my apartment building, it's United States, two people in here. I'm from United States. My partner, she's from Lithuania. My next door neighbor is from Argentina, and his lady's from Poland. And my neighbors down the hallway, they're from Somalia, and they've got like 3-4 people living in there. And my neighbors next door, I don't is the one Norwegian on the floor. So I mean, it's like Oslo itself is about 20% immigrants, and the country
Right.
itself is about 15%, which, considering the location of the country and all that, that's like quite diverse actually. And we're not even talking about like a lot of the diaspora that's been here for longer than that. So like visual representation of like diversity is like very rich here actually. But here's my argument against the silly United States is too big. When you have some place like the European Union, the EU, and you have another region like the EEA, the European Economic Area, I mean, this whole union, this whole area generally adheres to the same rules anyways. Like, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure to be a member of the European Union, you have to have these kinds of basic systems, like a healthcare system. You have to be providing for like basic human rights to be a part of the European Union. And like, for example, the like, I live in Norway. I'm an American, U.S. American living in Norway. You're a U.S. American living in Poland. I'm not sure exactly what your situation is, but if you are like actually like a resident here in a European country, you have right to healthcare, and you have that right to healthcare in all the European countries.
I'm glad you brought that up because now we could talk about how I got my first vaccine shot.
Yeah.
Since the whole point was talking about global differences in response to COVID. So yeah, no, like I said, I think this is our thing, man. We got our mutual ADD. We somehow managed to bring it all together, right? You bring it all together. Yeah. So yeah, but that came out a few months ago that anybody who's a legal resident, at least, I think that was the thing. Anyone who's a legal resident of Poland is entitled to COVID vaccine shot absolutely free. And since I'm working as a teacher, they bumped me up on priority because I obviously have a high risk for exposure. But and it was no problems, right? Yeah, like no hassles. And I mean, there's still people here that believe it's fake and refuse to take the vaccine. I mean, like, again, I really feel like there's a lot of similarities between the United States and Poland right now, actually.
Well, Poland was Donald Trump's like favorite European country.
Oh, I know. I think that the president of Poland was like the last guy to acknowledge Biden or congratulate him from Europe, something like that. So yeah. They really hate. I mean, it's complicated here. I'm certainly not going to be an expert on Poland because they have a president and a prime minister, and they people you talk to, they say they're both controlled by some whatever. I don't know the details, but the point is, even as an American,
probably the Jews or something.
I don't know. Well, I mean, again, I think we need to have a Jew lesson. I can't get on my teaching brain.
We got to have
Podcast.
a Torah lesson. We got to go read the Talmud.
Oh,
And the
like I
Torah,
said,
gotta
full
practice your
full
Hebrew.
disclosure. Yeah, full disclosure for anybody who's listening or curious, because like I said, I barely count as a Jewish person in most aspects of my life. I wasn't my father wasn't religious. I barely went to I've got a temple, maybe like less fingers I have on my hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't keep kosher. I like matzo ball soup. That's it. That's all. If that's is what makes me a Jewish person, but I do have at least appreciation for my ancestry in a way, because, you know, I think that to myself, like, how am I, you know, just to kind of not to sound too like whatever, can't even think of it, but like just be grateful that we, you know, somehow the scheme of life, whatever people that has allowed me to exist, right? Generations of people have existed for me to be here. So it's a part of my heritage that I appreciate and acknowledge and, you know, have a kinship for. But I'm like I would barely qualify myself as a Jewish person. My dad did, here's the thing, my dad did, quote unquote, convince my mom to convert when they got married.
Interesting.
So she wasn't Jewish. She converted from Presbyterianism, I think.
Wow.
Actually. Yeah. But then he didn't care. Like then after that, like he didn't care anymore. I think it mostly was to appease his parents, because back then it still mattered back then. So they converted, but I never was really raised in the religion at all.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
Sorry, I went on another tangent. Damn it. Well, no, it's related to globalism,
the globalist Jews.
Well, that's the thing. It's like I get all the prejudice and none of the benefits, if that makes any sense, right? I'm just like
well, I mean, man, I'm still waiting for my check. You know what I mean? Like, I heard that the Jews have all the money, and that like
or your bag of gold.
I'm waiting for my riches. Like, I'm one of the brokest Jews around. I don't know. Like, I'm waiting for that. Like, every day I check my mailbox. I'm waiting for like the gold and like the diamonds. Like, I'm just imagining it's gonna be there every day.
Yeah, like I said, you know. But bringing it back to global issues, right? Global progressivism abroad is that I think the problem is all we said again related to earlier is language. Because like you said, you try to tell people that we want to do these things. They say, oh, you're too radical, you're too extreme, you're far left, and then you're a socialist, you're a communist, and then I'd be like, well, I guess somebody should tell these Norwegians they're living in some sort of Marxist hellscape with their wonderful social welfare programs that make their quality of life much better than ours. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess, what do you think could or should happen to push America in a more, I'll say prosperous direction? It's tough. I know that's a heavy question. Because again, Joe Biden would have been a great president if this year was 1995, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he wants to govern like it is 1995. He's like, I'm Joe Biden. I'm old man. I've been a politician my entire life. I'm going to do bipartisan work with Republicans.
Dude, it's even like, to be honest, man, I think with Joe Biden, it's even creepier than that. Like, I think that like he is, I mean, especially also when you see like his cabinet and stuff like that. I mean, the whole thing is just really low key, really quiet. Like, I mean, it seems surreal to me, really, the whole thing. Like, I saw this speech yesterday from the new Secretary of State. What's his name? Blinken,
yeah.
But he's not new. Is he leftover? I can't remember.
No. I mean, no. He's been in government before.
Yeah,
but not for Trump.
And then I forget the other guy. But you know, they were they're at this like summit in Japan, and they're like being very baiting, like, you know, they're like very like baiting the whole like China issue and stirring up some stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I don't know really know where I was going with this, but
I'm glad you mentioned that. Again, to bring it back more global, we could talk about Taiwan as well, because I was living in Taiwan when the pandemic first hit, and for months they didn't have any lockdowns. they didn't even have to wear masks at the beginning, but they just had temperature checks and hand sanitizer everywhere. So again, it's easy to have COVID under control when you're an island, but also it was cultural because at least my experience being a teacher in Asia is that people usually wear face masks already. Like, and the difference is if like I'm senselessly grabbing my mask, it says made in Taiwan, represent Taiwan. So sorry if we get deleted off Chinese YouTube. But they're culturally and customarily, they usually wear face masks. And people wear face masks if they're sick because they are being considerate. They don't want to get other people sick, as opposed to the United States where people are like, well, I'm not going to wear a mask even if I am sick, and I'm going to cough in your face because I'm free. You know, and I think that's a big part of it is a cultural understanding and the difference.
Yeah, that's the same in Korea,
Yeah. That's just my opinion.
Right on. Well, I don't know. I see we've been talking for a long time. Maybe we should wrap it up for the day. Take it to the after
whatever
show.
You say, we can go either that or we end up through some other rabbit hole. But well, like I said, we're kind of, this is a perfect way to do this timeline wise because I'm basically forced to lock up. Like I live like 2 minutes away from my job and there's other teachers teaching right now, but I have the keys, so I have to go lock it up. So that's our perfect excuse to not blabble on for.
No, for us, I know we could talk all day. I'm more just concerned about our audience.
Oh yeah. Well, please, I hope that I eventually hope people would at least if anybody actually ends up listening or watching to send us some questions as well about stuff.
I'm saying this because I know not so many people are watching the chat right now, but like if you're listening to this in the future, like definitely send us some questions. That's really ultimately like, you know, at least the short-term goal is to kind of turn this into like a question and answer because I don't know. I think I can, you know, speak for you too, Mr. Lee J. Is like I really want to, you know, be able to share this kind of perspective with our friends and listeners and whatnot back in the United States and around the world, if that's helpful.
Right. Ultimately, I'd love to get other people's opinions because even though we're progressives abroad, again, we're still just a bunch of white Jewish guys who lived in Florida and now live in Europe. Like there's a whole bunch of other people out there whose opinions I want to know. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, we gotta get it going on. Yeah. So anyways, everybody, if you're listening, tune in. We're gonna try to do this every week. And feel free to drop us a tip in the little tip jar down there at the bottom of the screen. And I don't know. I guess we'll see you next week.
Yeah, Bull Moose Progressive on Twitter. That's all I do. I just Twitter troll sometimes, but I try to inject some thoughtfulness into the hellscape that's Twitter. Eventually, I want to kind of create more content politically otherwise. So thank you for involving me, and I hope we can keep doing this.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. This is teamwork makes the dream work. This is much fun, especially when we're like, you know, tag teaming over here. So I'll just I'll shut us down here, and we can have a hang out after the show for a second.
All right, sounds good.
All right, thanks everybody. Hit us up at Progress Abroad on Twitter, and also on Facebook and all that jazz. So see you next week. Wait a second. That's the wrong. There we go. And the mics are going down.